Strange, yet true stories. Tales from the light side, the dark side, and the other side. I'm Steve White. SkinWalker Ranch. This article was written by author Joni Mayan and is being used with permission. It can be found at theghostdiaries.com. Sherman Ranch, or as it's more commonly known, SkinWalker Ranch, is hands down one of the most mysterious places on Earth, crossing over into nearly every category of the paranormal world. Where else could UFO sightings be linked with poltergeist-like activity, interdimensional portals, shape-shifting humanoids, and mutant wolf encounters? Located in the eerie Uinta Basin of northeastern Utah and surrounded on three sides by mountains and cliffs, SkinWalker Ranch has been the source of thousands of UFO-type sightings and strange encounters reported by intrepid journalists who have dared to trespass on this private property. The general consensus is that some kind of above top-secret paranormal experimentation has been taking place there. But to truly understand how creepy and mysterious SkinWalker Ranch is, you have to know the history and the context. Some people have attributed the phenomena to the original Navajo legend of the Skinwalker. By definition, a skinwalker is a person, usually of Native American origin, who has the ability to transform into an animal of their choice. In the Navajo culture, skinwalkers can assume different forms based on their need. If they wanted to fly, they could be a bird, then transform into a wolf when they reach their destination. Due to their inhuman bursts of speed, they are nearly impossible to catch and can only be killed if they are mortally injured in the neck region. Skinwalkers are often lurkers, standing outside windows or approaching people on lonely highways. They can read minds to know what scares people and then use that information to instill fear and control their victims. The legend of the Skinwalker in the Uinta Basin area reportedly started in the 1800s, when European colonists began moving further west, pushing out the Native American tribes who had resided there for more than 1,000 years. During the Civil War, some Ute members allegedly took orders from Kit Carson in the battle against the Navajo, resulting in a curse on the land. Some believe a Skinwalker was created in the process, and that it still lives in the heart of the basin in a place called Shadow Canyon. Local tribe members avoid the area at all costs for fear of angering it. An interdimensional doorway? Shaman healer Michael Robichaud feels there's even more to the Uinta Basin area than the legends suggest. He believes the area might be an interdimensional doorway to another realm. I think it's a portal, but also has the spiritual basis of Native American rituals of an ancient origin that may be so old that even tribal elders don't even have the whole story of such an active place. It may be where the past meets the future, he said. What started out as a local legend would quickly gain national exposure, opening up a sea of interest and speculation. It would soon become perhaps the most thoroughly researched paranormal hotspot in the world, while providing its fair share of controversies and conspiracy theories in the process. In 1994, Terry and Gwen Sherman started the ball rolling when they purchased a 480-acre ranch in the basin area. It was a beautiful parcel of land with a picturesque ridge in the background, framing the rugged terrain, meandering stream, and a fringe of boxwood trees on the property. They hoped to realize their dreams of starting a cattle ranch, breeding top-quality animals while raising their 2 children in the scenic surroundings. Initially, the Shermans were curious about why such a beautiful ranch had sat unoccupied for 7 years. They got their answer shortly after moving in. The oddities began piling up, one by one. They found heavy iron stakes with metal chains at each end of the house, as though someone had chained up large animals to guard the doors. Padlocks were bolted onto many of the doors inside and out, suggesting that previous occupants were concerned for their safety. None of it made any sense to the new ranch owners, but they shrugged it off without giving it much thought. that would change soon enough. The day they moved their belongings into the small ranch cabin, they received their first dose of reality. A large wolf approached them as they stood outside with Terry's father, Ed. It was larger than any wolf the couple had ever seen, possibly weighing as much as 200 pounds. Both Terry and his father were over 6 feet tall, and the wolf was easily chest height on both of them. Nothing about the wolf suggested hostility. It acted like a lost pet, eager for attention. While they were initially leery of the animal, primarily due to its size, their concerns fell away quickly as the massive animal began brushing up against the two men, smelling strongly of wet dog. Gwen stood off to the side, keeping a close eye on her two children who were standing on a flatbed trailer, watching the scene unfold. After she grew more comfortable with the situation, she called the kids over to the animal, who showered it with attention and begged to keep it as a pet. But Terry knew from experience that wolves were cunning predators, and he just unloaded several prized Angus calves into a nearby pen. After a few moments, the wolf darted over to the pen and brazenly grabbed a calf by the head and attempted to pull it through the bars of the corral. Sherman and his father attempted to save the calf by kicking the wolf in the ribs and then beating it with a stick, but the wolf wasn't deterred. "Get my magnum," Terry called to his son, Tad. As soon as Terry had gotten his gun, he shot the wolf twice at point-blank range. Both bullets hit their mark, which should have killed the enormous beast, but it was unfazed by the assault. It continued trying to pull the distressed calf from the pen, showing no signs of injury. Terry shot the wolf a third time, which finally seemed to get the animal's attention. It released its hold on the calf and backed off a few feet, but still didn't run away, which would have been normal wolf behavior. Terry took aim and shot the animal a fourth time, striking it in the heart with what should have been a fatal blow. But the wolf still was not harmed. The sense of panic was nearly palpable. Why wouldn't it die? Not knowing what else to do, Terry's father retrieved a shotgun from his truck and shot the wolf again. This time, the results were visible. A flurry of fur and flesh flew into the air, the pellets undeniably hitting their mark. Instead of falling to the ground dead, the wolf backed off several more feet and continued to regard them with an icy blue stare. What was it going to take to bring down this beast? Ed took aim again and shot the beast in the chest, sending more fur and flesh flying. The wolf stared at them for a moment before calmly loping away. When they attempted to pursue it, they were mystified to discover that the tracks suddenly ended. It was as though the wolf vanished into thin air. The wolf sighting was only a prelude to what would happen next. The family began noticing other odd occurrences around the ranch, including strange balls of light that seemed to hover in the sky. Along with the orbs, they also saw peculiar lights in the sky and voices that seemed to come from directly above their heads. They started seeing faces at the windows, which turned into apparitions standing at the foot of their beds. Members of the family began having terrifying nightmares, and objects began disappearing, only to reappear somewhere else. One day, Gwen carried in groceries from the car and unloaded them onto the counter, preparing to put them away. She turned around, distracted by something. When she turned back, all the groceries were back in the bags, as though she'd never unpacked them. The strangeness only increased from there. They began smelling a strong musky scent that they could not explain. They also began finding their prized cattle dead in the fields, mutilated beyond belief. Some had their genital areas mutilated, while another had its eye completely removed, as if it was done surgically. Cattle began disappearing at an alarming rate, which was detrimental to Terry's ranching business. He lost 20% of his herd in 2 years, which is excessive compared to the normal 1% rate that most ranchers in the area faced. The orbs of light seemed particularly intrigued by the cattle, often lingering over their heads. Terry wasn't certain what to do about his losses. His cattle weren't ordinary cows. They were prized cattle that cost him thousands of dollars. Having them disappear so mysteriously was disconcerting, to say the least, especially considering many of them vanished without a trace, leaving a trail of hoofprints behind them. Things would only get worse. Lights would appear out of the sky, blanketing the entire area to near daylight conditions. Strange animals were often seen roaming around the ranch. Bright tropical birds were spotted in the trees, and their dogs became so fearful of the activity, they cowered in their doghouses and refused to come out, even for food and water. 6 of their outdoor cats disappeared in a single night. The final straw came one night when their dogs began chasing one of the strange orbs of light. Terry Sherman encouraged the dogs to chase it, and they quickly disappeared into the darkness. Moments later, he heard the undeniable sounds of the animals yelping. They pursued the sound, but could find no trace of the animals. The next morning, they discovered 3 scorched circles in the ground with gooey lumps of liquefied flesh in the centers. Something had killed the dogs. Enough was enough. Life on the ranch wasn't what they imagined. The financial losses from the missing cattle were nearly bankrupting them. The children's grades were dropping, and sleeping was becoming a real issue for the family due to the constant activity and nightmares. Towards the end, they were all sleeping together in the same room, hoping for safety in numbers. After telling their story to a journalist at a Salt Lake City newspaper, the Shermans were approached by an unusual buyer. In 1996, hotel entrepreneur Robert Bigelow paid the Shermans $200,000 for their ranch and turned it into a research facility to study the paranormal events, founding NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science, to formalize the project. Over a period of time, he hired psychologists, engineers, physicists, and biologists to aid in his research. And he locked down the ranch, hiring former military security guards to keep it protected from outsiders. He established a science advisory board and brought in state-of-the-art equipment. The tables were turning at SkinWalker Ranch. The hunters were now being hunted. During the early days at the ranch, the NIDS team consisted of a veterinarian, a physicist, and a biochemist. Even though the Shermans moved to a ranch 25 miles away, Terry Sherman agreed to stay on as the ranch manager, caring for the livestock both he and NIDS brought in to act as bait for the paranormal activity. Teams investigated the ranch in pairs, often bringing a dog along with them as they made their rounds. One of the researchers hired for the ranch was Dr. Colm A. Kelleher, a biochemist with 15 years of cell and molecular biology experience. Kelleher became the deputy administrator of NIDS and, among other things, documented the events that transpired at the ranch. The team's veterinarian inspected the cattle, finding no outward cause of death. The bodies were too far along in their decomposition for any further analysis to be done, so they tucked the information away, hoping it would make more sense later. George Knapp, a respected journalist who was known for his work on another UFO story that brought him both fame and disdain from his fellow journalists, joined the team. Never before had so many resources been provided for the sake of paranormal research. He was anxious to see what they would uncover. Soon after arriving on the ranch, Knapp had his first experience with the glowing orb lights. 2 groups were stationed in different areas of the ranch to watch for activity. As Knapp's group waited for something to happen, they saw a bright yellow orb of light shoot out from behind the ridge. It moved silently but swiftly, at the speed of a jet airplane. To their amazement, it circled in a perfect 360-degree loop before shooting back across the ridge. The event happened so unexpectedly, the only photos they were able to capture didn't properly document the event. They would have to settle for the personal experience. It wasn't until January of 1997 that activity at the SkinWalker Ranch began to majorly escalate. Terry Sherman called with news of more activity. This time, instead of mysterious orbs, more cows were being mutilated. In the midst of an intense snowstorm, with temperatures plummeting to minus 30 degrees, 3 calves were found with odd wounds on their ears and eyes. 2 of the calves had circular spots cut out of their eyelids, while the 3rd calf's ear had been shredded, as if cut with scissors. The veterinarian called to inspect them found the injuries to be strange, especially considering they occurred during the midst of a major snowstorm. Typically, natural predators such as coyotes and wolves don't hunt in such dire weather conditions. After another calf mutilation occurred in broad daylight a month later, the researchers were more perplexed than ever. What was going on at SkinWalker Ranch? The NIDS team flew in from Nevada after receiving Sherman's second call and were shocked at what they saw. The 85-pound dead calf was splayed out, nearly spread eagle. One of its legs had been yanked from the knee socket with brute force and was placed away from the body as though it were staged. All the calf's internal organs were missing, and the body was entirely drained of blood. There wasn't so much as a drop of blood on or around the body. This definitely was not the work of a natural predator. As they stood at the scene, scratching their heads in wonder, they noticed the mother cow standing nearby. She had her head down and was in a state of agitation, having witnessed something the researchers could only guess about. The veterinarian inspected the calf, coming upon a strange discovery. One of the calf's ears was missing. It had been cut neatly down to the skull, not torn off. If a predator had done this, the flesh would have been ragged and ripped, but this one was removed with surgical precision. Even stranger, the ear that was removed had sported a large yellow tag used to identify the cow. They searched the entire ranch looking for the tag, but never found it. It was almost as though the unseen predator was taking souvenirs, like some maniacal serial killer. Even the ranch dogs seemed shaken by the series of events. Instead of greeting the men with wagging tails, they cowered in their pens, obviously traumatized. It took them 2 days to come out of their pens, but even then, they were still visibly uneasy. Something was undeniably still lurking in the area. Later that night, the researchers were alerted by the sound of the dogs barking and howling. They looked around the immediate vicinity, but couldn't see what was causing the ruckus. They jumped into the farm truck and began scouring the area, using the truck's spotlight to inspect the outlying areas. Nothing seemed amiss until they came to a clump of trees. One of the cows was hunkered beneath the trees, separated from the rest of the herd, a typical sign that the animal was in distress. When the men got out of the truck to check on her, their lights caught the glow of amber eyes in the tree above her. Thinking it was a large cat, they shot the beast with a high-powered rifle. The second the shot rang out, the amber eyes disappeared. But when they searched the area, they could find no trace of the beast. It was as though it disappeared before their eyes. The team searched the area, looking for tracks in the snow, but didn't find anything. Surely, if something ran away, it would have left tracks behind. As they continued to hunt for the predator, they came upon a startling sight. Instead of a cat footprint, they found what appeared to be the print of a giant bird of prey. It was nearly 6 inches in diameter, with 2 sharp claw marks protruding from the rear. Alarmed, they searched the area further and found another single print 20 feet away. By the depth of the print, they judged the animal to be large and heavy, unlike anything they'd ever seen on the ranch. The following month, more strange events happened that would force them to question their own sanity. This is the end of Part 1 of Joni Mayan's written account of the SkinWalker Ranch in Utah. Part 2 will air in the next week. If you like this presentation, leave us a comment and subscribe to our channel. Your support and feedback helps us know what you like and how to curate the stories you would like to hear. Thanks to those who have left us feedback already, and to those who have subscribed. It is greatly appreciated by those of us at Strange But True Stories. I'm Steve White. Until next time.